Welcome to TechEyeSpy, where we take a closer look at the companies building the backbone of tomorrow's technology. Today, we're focusing on a firm that rarely makes headlines, but quietly shapes the future of computing. Lam Research, traded on the NASDAQ under the ticker LRCX. If you've ever wondered how the intricate circuitry inside your smartphone, your computer, or the data centers that power artificial intelligence are actually made, Lam Research is one of the essential answers. This is not a consumer brand. It's an industrial powerhouse, a company that builds the machines that make semiconductors possible. Founded in 1980, Lam began as a small Californian startup working on plasma etching technology, a process that sculpts microscopic pathways into silicon wafers. Over the decades, that simple yet radical concept has grown into a global empire of wafer fabrication equipment. Every new generation of chips, from the early microprocessors to the latest 3-nanometer designs, has relied on Lam's tools to achieve impossible precision. Semiconductors are the nervous system of modern civilization. Without them, there would be no smartphones, no data centers, no satellites, and no electric vehicles. Yet this entire ecosystem depends on a handful of equipment makers, companies like ASML, Tokyo Electron, Applied Materials, and Lam Research. Together, they form a cartel of capability, a technological guild so specialized that even governments struggle to replicate it. Lam stands out in this elite circle because of its mastery of etch and deposition, two steps in the semiconductor manufacturing process that define the shape, depth, and purity of microscopic features on each chip. Its machines operate at the atomic level, sculpting materials with such precision that even a human hair, if magnified to the scale of a wafer, would look like a canyon compared to Lam's etch lines. But what makes Lam Research fascinating is not just its engineering. It's the company's position in a world reshaping its semiconductor supply chain. From the trade tensions between the United States and China to the global rush for chip sovereignty, Lam finds itself at the heart of the new industrial order. Governments are subsidizing factories, but they can't subsidize expertise. That's where Lam holds a silent form of power. It owns the know, how that every nation wants but few can reproduce. In today's analysis, we'll break down Lam's strengths, its weaknesses, its opportunities, and its threats. We'll look at why it's one of the most profitable companies you've probably never seen advertised, and why the machines it builds may decide who wins the global race for advanced computing. This is Lam Research, the architect of invisible precision. Strengths. Lam Research's greatest strength lies in its mastery of plasma etch and deposition, the two invisible yet critical stages of semiconductor manufacturing. In essence, these processes define the architecture of a chip. When you hear about a 5-nanometer or 3-nanometer design, what you're really hearing is a story of atomic-scale sculpting and layering. And Lam Research builds the tools that make this possible. Their etch systems remove material with almost surgical precision, carving pathways only a few atoms wide. Their deposition tools then add new layers of material, forming the microscopic transistors that make digital logic possible. It's a delicate dance between chemistry, physics, and engineering performed millions of times per wafer and repeated across billions of chips worldwide. No two machines in Lam's portfolio are identical. Each is tailored to the customer's production environment, the type of wafer, and even the desired outcome of the final product. This adaptability gives Lam an edge in a market where one size fits all simply doesn't exist. A second major strength is Lam's recurring revenue model. While it earns billions from the sale of new systems, an even larger and more stable source of income comes from spare parts, upgrades, and ongoing service contracts. These support revenues create a dependable foundation that cushions the company during the inevitable slowdowns of the semiconductor cycle. Once a fab installs Lam's equipment, they rarely switch vendors. The calibration, the chemistry, and the training are too intertwined to replace. It's not just a sale, it's a marriage of process and precision. Lam's customer base reads like the who's who of global chipmaking. The company counts TSMC, Samsung, Intel, Micron, SK Hynix, and many others as long-term clients. This network of industry giants forms a protective moat around Lam's business because these firms depend on Lam's consistency and cannot afford disruptions. When a chip plant is built, Lam's systems are built into its DNA. Another pillar of strength is Lam's technological partnerships. The company invests heavily in co-development projects with customers. This means that as chip makers design their next generation of nodes, Lam's engineers are already working in parallel to create compatible processes. That gives Lam early insight into the next technological shift, whether it's gate all-around transistors, 3D NAND, or the hybrid bonding techniques that are redefining chip stacking. Lam's research spending has consistently risen, reflecting a deep commitment to innovation rather than short-term profit. It's a mindset that places the company within the same rarefied circle as ASML in lithography and Tokyo Electron in process integration. Each year, Lam dedicates around 15% of its revenue to research and development, an enormous reinvestment by industrial standards. The result is a steady pipeline of proprietary systems and patented plasma technologies that competitors can't easily replicate. Then there's execution discipline. Lam has a culture of operational efficiency that is the envy of Silicon Valley. Its manufacturing processes are lean, its margins are robust, and its management rarely makes noise in the media. Instead, it focuses on long-term value creation. The company has mastered the balance between engineering complexity and financial simplicity. Investors often describe Lam as boring but brilliant, a stock that rewards patience rather than hype. A subtler strength lies in Lam's geographic and geopolitical positioning. Although its tools are used globally, its intellectual property and design centers are rooted firmly in the United States, giving it protection under US trade regulations and access to the strategic semiconductor funding initiatives that are reshaping the global landscape. In a time when the world is fragmenting into technology blocks, Lam's alignment with US policy makes it a crucial partner in Washington's vision of chip independence. Finally, Lam Research has achieved something few industrial companies ever do. It has become synonymous with reliability. Its tools have a reputation for consistency measured not in days or weeks, but in atomic uniformity across millions of wafers. Every percentage point of precision translates into billions of dollars of value for its customers. This is why Lam can charge premium prices and maintain customer loyalty even in downturns. Lam's strengths, therefore, are not just technical, they are systemic. The company has embedded itself so deeply into the semiconductor manufacturing chain that removing it would be like trying to delete gravity from the laws of physics. It doesn't make chips, but without Lam, no one else can either. Weaknesses. For all its technical brilliance, Lam Research operates in a world of extreme dependency and cyclic vulnerability. Its first and most obvious weakness is exposure to the semiconductor capital expenditure cycle. When chip makers decide to expand, Lam's order books overflow. When they pause, revenues can evaporate almost overnight. The industry's boom and bust rhythm has been constant for 40 years, and no company, however skilled, has found a way to escape it. Lam can cushion the blow with service contracts, but when major customers like TSMC or Samsung delay capital spending, even the best balance sheet feels the tremor. This cyclical sensitivity creates a challenge for investors because Lam's financial performance swings heavily with the market. One year, the company reports record profits. The next, it might experience a 30 or 40% decline in system shipments. Few businesses operate with such volatility while maintaining long-term growth. Lam manages it well, but the volatility remains a structural weakness built into the DNA of the semiconductor world. Another issue is concentration risk. A small handful of customers account for the majority of Lam's revenue. The top three, typically TSMC, Samsung, and Micron, can represent more than half of annual sales. This dependence gives those clients enormous bargaining power. If one of them shifts a major process to a competitor like Applied Materials or Tokyo Electron, Lam's quarterly results can take a visible hit. The relationships are deep and often long-term, but they are not immune to politics, price negotiations, or the constant technical leapfrogging that defines chip manufacturing. There is also a technological fragility to Lam's position. The company dominates etch and deposition, but it has almost no exposure to lithography, metrology, or packaging fields where other equipment makers thrive. This narrow focus gives Lam unmatched expertise, but leaves it dependent on continued innovation in its own niche. If the industry shifts toward processes that require fewer etch steps, or if new materials reduce the need for Lam's plasma tools, its growth curve could flatten. It's a form of specialization risk, being the best in the world at something that could one day change form. Another weakness lies in supply chain complexity. Lam's machines contain thousands of precision components sourced from a global network of suppliers. Many of these parts are custom-made and cannot be easily substituted. During the COVID-19 pandemic and the following geopolitical disruptions, Lam struggled to maintain delivery schedules, exposing how finely tuned and vulnerable its logistics really are. When a single high-voltage component or vacuum seal is delayed, a multi-million-dollar system can sit unfinished for weeks. The just-in-time efficiency that once made Lam lean has also made it fragile. The company also faces a talent bottleneck. Semiconductor equipment engineering is a highly specialized field. There are only so many plasma physicists, materials scientists, and vacuum system experts in the world, and Lam is competing with both its customers and its rivals for the same minds. This scarcity drives up costs and slows the pace of recruitment. Moreover, as the company expands into new territories like Malaysia and Korea, it must transfer not only staff but culture, a delicate process that risks dilution of its once tightly unified identity. Another subtle weakness is exposure to export controls and government policy. Lam's tools are considered dual-use technologies under US export regulations. This means they are subject to licensing and restrictions, particularly regarding advanced sales to China. China represents nearly a third of Lam's historical revenue, yet Washington's rules now limit the shipment of certain advanced systems. The company can still serve legacy nodes, but its high-end business in China has been sharply curtailed. The effect is a silent drag on growth and a constant risk of sudden policy changes. Lam finds itself in the awkward position of being both a US strategic asset and a company penalized by that same strategy. Lam's scale and capital intensity also act as a constraint. Each new generation of equipment requires billions in research spending and years of iterative development. The company's size ensures stability but limits agility. It cannot pivot quickly into entirely new markets, nor can it easily diversify into adjacent sectors like photonics or quantum hardware without significant investment. This makes Lam highly effective within its domain, but slow to evolve beyond it. Finally, there is a communication weakness in Lam's public image. For a company so central to modern civilization, Lam remains almost invisible outside financial circles. It lacks the narrative power of ASML, the glamour of NVIDIA, or even the recognition of Intel. That anonymity can be a double-edged sword. It protects Lam from public scrutiny, but it also limits its ability to attract young engineers or inspire investors who are motivated by stories rather than spreadsheets. Lam's weaknesses, therefore, are not flaws of competence, but of structure. The company sits atop a technological mountain, but it must constantly climb it again every few years. Its dependency on a handful of customers, its exposure to global politics, and its need for atomic precision at industrial scale all form a fragile web. The company endures not because it is indestructible, but because it is disciplined, a master craftsman navigating a world built on uncertainty. Opportunities. Lam Research stands at the threshold of one of the greatest technological expansions in modern history, the rebirth of the semiconductor age, driven by artificial intelligence, electrification, and global reindustrialization. If the past 40 years were about making computers faster and smaller, the next 40 will be about embedding intelligence into everything. Lam's role is to provide the machinery to sculpt that intelligence at the atomic level. The first and most immediate opportunity comes from AI-driven chip demand. Every major technology company from NVIDIA and AMD to Google and Amazon is racing to produce specialized silicon for artificial intelligence workloads. These chips are larger, more complex, and more layered than traditional designs. They require new manufacturing techniques, deeper etching, and more sophisticated deposition to build the 3D structures that allow for massive parallelism and heat dissipation. Lam's expertise directly aligns with these needs. In fact, each new generation of AI hardware increases the number of Lam systems required per wafer line, creating a compounding effect across the supply chain. Another major opportunity lies in 3D integration and advanced packaging. As chipmakers confront the physical limits of traditional planar scaling, they're turning to stacking layering chips vertically to create faster and more efficient systems. This architectural revolution depends heavily on Lam's etch and clean technologies. The company's atomic layer precision is what allows multiple dies to be bonded together without defects or thermal mismatch. The rise of heterogeneous integration, where memory, logic, and analog components coexist within a single package, will keep Lam's innovation pipeline busy for decades. Lam also benefits from the relocalization of semiconductor manufacturing. The geopolitical reshuffling of global supply chains is driving governments to invest hundreds of billions in domestic chip production. The United States, the European Union, Japan, and India are all pouring money into new fabs. Each of those fabs will need Lam's equipment. Unlike commodity industries, you can't simply import a plasma etcher from a rival region. The tool, the process recipe, and the support infrastructure all come from Lam's ecosystem. This means the global chip sovereignty movement effectively guarantees a sustained wave of demand for Lam's systems and services. The company's expansion into service and software integration opens another horizon. Modern fabs are no longer just physical spaces, they're cyber. Physical systems, complex digital twins, monitored and optimized by artificial intelligence. Lam has been developing process control software that uses machine learning to fine-tune its systems in real time. By embedding intelligence into the tools themselves, Lam transforms from a hardware vendor into a platform provider, one that can offer continuous performance optimization across the lifetime of each machine. This creates sticky, high-margin, recurring revenue that scales with every installed base. A less visible but equally powerful opportunity lies in materials innovation. As the industry experiments with new substrates, gallium nitride, silicon carbide, and two-dimensional materials like graphene, the chemistry of etch and deposition must evolve. Lam's research in atomic layer etch techniques and selective deposition gives it an early lead in shaping these emerging processes. When new materials enter mass production, Lam will already have the recipes ready, allowing it to dominate the transition phase just as it did during the move from planar to 3D NAND. Lam is also positioned to gain from sustainability and energy efficiency. Semiconductor fabs are among the most resource-intensive facilities on Earth. They consume vast amounts of water, electricity, and specialty gases. Governments and customers are now demanding cleaner production, and Lam's engineers are developing systems that reduce chemical waste and improve gas recycling. By offering sustainability as a service, Lam can align itself with environmental targets while cutting operating costs for clients, a win-win that enhances both brand and profitability. Furthermore, Lam has room to expand into emerging economies that are building regional fabs for legacy nodes. Nations like Vietnam, Malaysia, and India are attracting investment for chips used in cars, appliances, and industrial control systems. These nodes don't need cutting-edge 3-nanometer technology, but they still require reliable etch and deposition tools, Lam's bread and butter. By localizing production and service operations in these regions, Lam can diversify away from China while capturing the next billion chips of global demand. There is also a profound financial opportunity embedded in Lam's own maturity. The company's consistent profitability and cash generation give it the power to invest aggressively in the next frontier, whether through strategic acquisitions, joint ventures, or long-term research programs. It could play a pivotal role in shaping new semiconductor manufacturing paradigms, from chiplets and photonics to quantum devices. Its deep collaboration model means Lam can enter new fields without abandoning its core. It becomes the enabler of whatever architecture comes next. Finally, the greatest opportunity may simply be time. Every industrial revolution rewards those who control the tools of production. In the digital age, those tools are semiconductor fabrication systems. As AI grows more pervasive and automation spreads into every sector, demand for advanced chips will not decline, it will compound. Lam's ability to scale precision, reliability, and atomic control places it at the center of that exponential curve. Lam Research's opportunities are not just about market share or new machines. They're about ownership of process knowledge, the know-how to shape matter itself into logic. In a world where intelligence is becoming physical, Lam is not merely a supplier. It is the craftsman of the new machine age. Threats. Every empire of precision lives under the shadow of fragility. For Lam Research, the threats are not born from carelessness or competition alone, but from the nature of the semiconductor industry itself, a domain where physics, politics, and economics collide. The most immediate and persistent threat comes from geopolitical fragmentation. The semiconductor supply chain has become a strategic battlefield. The United States and China, once bound by technological interdependence, now stand on opposite sides of a widening divide. As a US-based company, Lam is caught in the crossfire. Washington's export controls prevent Lam from supplying advanced tools to Chinese fabs that produce chips below certain thresholds. On paper, this protects US national interests. In practice, it slices away nearly a third of Lam's potential market. China, unwilling to remain dependent, is investing heavily in domestic alternatives. Its equipment firms, like Nora and Advanced Microfabrication Equipment Incorporated, are racing to close the gap. They may be years behind, but they are determined, well-funded, and politically protected. If Chinese firms reach technical parity in etch or deposition, Lam will lose not just customers, but a region that once drove its highest growth rates. Even if parity remains distant, duplication alone could fracture the global ecosystem that Lam has spent decades mastering. Another major threat comes from technological limits, the boundary where physics resists ambition. As chip features shrink toward the 2-nanometer frontier, every new step becomes exponentially harder. The materials used in plasma etching begin to behave unpredictably at the atomic scale. Contaminants, electrical fields, and quantum effects distort what once seemed precise. Lam's entire business depends on staying ahead of that curve. But there is no guarantee that existing plasma processes can extend indefinitely. A disruptive breakthrough, such as an alternative computing paradigm that bypasses traditional silicon, could render decades of expertise less relevant. Competition is also intensifying. Applied Materials and Tokyo Electron continue to challenge Lam's leadership in both etch and deposition. Each new node is an arms race in patents, performance, and yield. The competition is not only technical, but political governments favor domestic champions. In Japan, Tokyo Electron enjoys preferential access. In the United States, Applied Materials has deeper lobbying roots. In South Korea and Taiwan, Lam must constantly prove its neutrality. The danger lies in a future where regional protectionism divides markets and prevents Lam from competing evenly across the world. Another emerging threat is supply chain fragility. The COVID pandemic exposed how dependent the semiconductor industry is on a web of highly specialized suppliers. A single shortage in vacuum components or rare gases can delay production across multiple countries. Even natural disasters, earthquakes in Japan, floods in Malaysia, or power shortages in Texas can ripple through Lam's operations. The push toward regionalization may reduce some risks, but also increases complexity. Building multiple redundant supply chains comes at a high financial and logistical cost. There's also a more subtle threat data and intellectual property leakage. Lam's systems are installed inside fabs, owned by customers that are also, in many ways, competitors. Each installation involves sharing highly proprietary process recipes and calibration methods. As global tensions rise, the risk of espionage grows too. A leak of process data could allow competitors, or even nation-states, to clone or reverse engineer Lam's technology. Protecting that intellectual capital is a continuous and invisible war fought through cybersecurity and trust. Environmental and regulatory pressures form another growing threat. The semiconductor industry faces increasing scrutiny for its environmental footprint. Etching and deposition use corrosive gases and high-energy inputs. Governments are tightening emissions rules, particularly around perfluorinated compounds used in plasma processes. Compliance is costly, and failure could lead to fines or public backlash. Lam must reinvent its chemistry faster than regulators can write new laws. Financially, the high capital intensity of the industry is its own threat. Each technological generation costs more to develop than the one before. The research budgets required to maintain leadership are measured in billions. If Lam were ever to miss a key transition, say a shift to a radically new transistor architecture, it could find itself locked out of the next growth cycle. The company's reliance on a small set of mega customers magnifies that risk. One cancelled program can erase a year of progress. Finally, there is the intangible threat of strategic exhaustion. Lam operates at the frontier of complexity, balancing science, policy, and manufacturing scale. The constant race for precision can wear down even the strongest organization. Innovation, fatigue, leadership turnover, or a misstep in anticipating the next industry phase could cost dearly. In a world this competitive, one missed generation can feel like a century. Lam Research therefore stands like a tightrope walker across a canyon, steady, graceful, and admired, yet one crosswind away from peril. Its threats are existential, not because it is weak, but because it operates in a domain where perfection is mandatory and time is merciless. To survive, it must continue doing what it has always done: invent faster than the world changes. Our conclusion: Lam Research is the quiet power behind the modern world. It does not sell to consumers. It does not appear in advertising. And yet its tools touch almost every digital experience we have, from the phone in your pocket to the cloud servers that feed your AI models. Without Lam's machines, none of it could exist. It's the company that makes the microscopic possible. What's fascinating about Lam is how invisible its influence remains. We celebrate brands that write software or design chips, but rarely do we consider those who engineer the process that makes the physical chip real. Lam operates in that unseen layer between imagination and matter. It turns physics into functionality and chemistry into code. Its strengths are formidable, unmatched precision, deep customer integration, and an R&D machine that continually pushes the atomic frontier. It thrives on reliability, process mastery, and the kind of discipline that few companies can sustain over decades. But those same qualities make its weaknesses inevitable. Lam lives by the cycle of its industry, tied to the spending decisions of a handful of chip makers and the mood of global politics. Its opportunities are immense. Artificial intelligence, chip sovereignty, and three-dimensional integration all require Lam's expertise. The company stands to benefit from the new industrial wave sweeping across continents, a world where every nation wants to build its own silicon backbone. And yet, the threats are equally clear. Geopolitical fragmentation, export controls, environmental scrutiny, and the physical limits of miniaturization all form clouds that never fully lift. In the end, Lam Research embodies the paradox of the semiconductor age. Absolute precision built on constant uncertainty. It cannot control demand, politics, or even the laws of physics, only its own ability to engineer around them. That humility, coupled with relentless innovation, is what has kept Lam among the few who truly understand how to manufacture the future. So the next time someone talks about artificial intelligence, quantum computing, or the next big chip revolution, remember Lam Research, the craftsman behind the curtain. It doesn't just build machines. It builds the foundation of intelligence itself. Thank you for watching this TechEyeSpy SWOT analysis of Lam Research. If you enjoy exploring the hidden engines of the technology world, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and follow the channel for daily episodes. Until next time, keep watching the world of technology through a sharper lens only on TechEyeSpy.